There we are. We're panning. There's Jonathan back there.
All right, so I want to start this afternoon with an idea here. I want you guys to think for a second. What do you think of when you hear the word red carpet or the words red carpet? We instantly go to like the Oscars and all the cameras are going off and the great suits and the designers and all the dresses and everyone's there and our favorite celebrities are there, just like strutting down and the world is worshiping them while they're there. Now, I for one am just as guilty when I say this, but sometimes we just desire for that. It's our human nature, yeah, but that's not a good excuse for it. And also, that pride that comes out of us that way is a terrible terrible witness of the call that we have to servanthood. And that's what we're going to talk about today, is this call of servanthood. So many of us here know the story in Scripture in John 13 where Jesus washes the feet of the disciples. Now, what we're going to be looking at, so if you want to go ahead and turn to John 13, verses 12 through 17, there's a discourse that Jesus gives immediately following. And it says this: After he had washed their feet, had put on his robe, and returned to the table, he said to them, "Do you know what I have done to you? You call me teacher and Lord, and you are right, for that is what I am. So if I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also ought to wash one another's feet. For I have set you an example, that you should also do as I have done to you. Very truly I tell you, servants are not greater than their master, nor are messengers greater than the one who sent them. If you know these things, you are blessed if you do them." So I just want to walk through this passage with you guys so we can see this calling that we have to be servants that lead other servants. So think back, whether in school or a sport you did, a favorite teacher, or a favorite coach, or someone who led you or taught you in some hobby or interest. Didn't you want to be as good as them someday? Didn't you look up to them? Didn't you listen to everything they told you to do just so you could have that reward of thinking, yeah, I finally got it right? For me, grades 8 through 12, I had this choir director. And she just taught me all these different things that were involved with performing and reading music, things that my previous director had never talked about. So I considered her an expert, and I respected her because of that. That's the same idea we're looking at here in verses 13 and 14. The disciples were students of Jesus. They followed him, and they learned everything they could from him. They looked up to him and respected him because, again, he was their expert to them, their teacher. For them, just like it is for us, the social norm is you want to do just as your teacher does. You strive for that. Because, again, they're the pros. They're the ones who know what's going on. Jesus understands that this is the relationship that he has with him and his disciples. And he tells them that they're right to say that about him. But they also need to take another step with that. And they also need to do as he does. Not just call him teacher, but imitate him as well. Moving on to our next section in verse 15 and 16, we have Jesus telling them exactly what action that needs imitating. So my choir director, going back to that, taught me very specific lessons: breathing techniques, enunciation, sight singing, and we would work on that stuff constantly, different specific things. Now Jesus in this passage is giving them a more specific lesson about serving others. In the previous narrative that I mentioned, Jesus taught them the importance of the foot washing, but now he is opening up in a more general sense to talk about living a life of service for others. There is a key part to this narrative, and go ahead and take a look with me because I don't want us to miss this at all. Verse 16 is saying that the slave is not greater than the master, and the messenger is not greater than the one who sent them. Makes sense. But Jesus is actually reversing the roles here. What he's telling his disciples is that they need to be the one who is the servant, not putting themselves with authority or pride above everyone else. Jesus embodies this, and he is the example of this by his previous act of the foot washing for his disciples. I mentioned the red carpet earlier because I read this really great metaphor by Paul Metzger, and I wanted to share this. And he said that even though Jesus belonged on the red carpet, this honor, this significance and importance, instead, he brings himself to what Paul Metzger talks about as this old doormat. that serves and is there, and there's constant use for it. And it's because of love and humility that he does this. He is calling his disciples to follow his example of not putting themselves up on this red carpet, but being the humble doormat. So we have our last verse, which is 17, which talks about being blessed for doing these things to others. If they know this, if they know and understand that they are to serve as they are beneath others, they will be blessed for doing it. They could know this and quote it until they're blue in the face, and so could we. But if they didn't act on it, there's no blessing there. Going back to my choir director, I could tell her what key a piece of music was in, I could tell her what notes were written or what the solfege was, but I wouldn't get the passing grade unless I acted on that knowledge. Until I sang the piece to the best of my ability with the knowledge I had, there wouldn't be the reward of getting it done right. The lesson that Jesus is teaching them is about acting in love and humility through serving others. Jesus was a teacher to these men, and they wanted to live like he did. He taught them to act and to live a life of loving service to others, and that by doing so, they would be blessed. So what about us? How do we take ourselves off of the red carpet and flop down just like an old doormat and live of loving service just as Jesus did? We see people all the time who need help with something. And now we have winter coming. I'm sorry, I know snow, no one wants to talk about snow, but driveways are going to be full. Older people can't get their driveways clear. They can't get their cars out of the parking lot sometimes. Are we going to just keep ourselves behind the scenes and just worry about ourselves? That's not what Jesus wants for us. That's not what he calls us to. When we do these actions, it's part of an attitude as well. Are we going to do it to say, oh, look at me, look at the cool things I've done, look how good I am, awesome I am? But that still puts us on that red carpet. That puts us in front of everyone to be this, oh, look at me, instead of the doormat, instead of being humble and loving and doing it out of love for other people. Why is it important for us? Not just because Jesus said to. Now, that is very important. It's a command for us. But also because it is a way of showing witness to the love and service of Jesus. Gail O'Day wrote this in her commentary on the Gospel of John, and she quotes here, "Our service to one another is a revelation of the love that Christ has for all. We do it in humility and to reveal the service of Christ for us." I just want to challenge you guys today with the idea of what's it going to look like to serve out of love? Not because, oh, we're told to, or because it'll make my resume look good because I have volunteer hours, or, marking off a checklist. But it's out of love for other people and how we can embody Christ and imitate Christ through that.